Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at vanta.com.
I was beaten to death, so I was pronounced dead on the scene. It changed my entire life. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing ever. I'd started to get in the mix again and really, I guess to your point, grab it. But I hadn't dealt with a lot of the shit. Externally, I was like, let's go. I'm in America. I've got a new life. And that was how I lived. I think that's why hosting was so good for me and so bad for me, because I got so good at putting on a show. Putting on the mask and being like, hi, I'm Oliver Trevina and welcome to, you trick yourself into what am I actually feeling?
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 337. So happy you're here. As you settle in, though, you might notice yourself becoming curious about how some of the most powerful ideas don't arrive fully formed. They arrive scribbled, simple, almost obvious. Because sometimes when you allow yourself to look again at what's been in front of you all along, you discover that the future isn't something you invent, it's something you remember. Today's episode is about one of those kinds of conversations. My guest is Oliver Trevena. He's an actor, a host, an entrepreneur, and co-founder of a company that started with a deceptively simple napkin. On it, he wrote a few words: Cactus Create a hydration revolution, ancient plant, future of hydration. And as you listen, you might find yourself reflecting on moments in your own life where disruption or even crisis quietly redirected you towards something more aligned. Oliver shares a deeply human story, from a life-altering event at 21 years old to crossing an ocean in search of safety and perspective, to building a wellness brand rooted not in hype, but in substance. This is a conversation about growth versus comfort, about curiosity as a leadership skill, about trusting nature, trusting your instincts, and learning how to hold responsibility when other people believe in your vision. And somewhere along the way, you might begin to notice how the ideas that endure, the ones that grow, the ones that matter, are often the simplest ones, once you're ready to see them. So let's grab a napkin, let the edges blur just enough, and allow this conversation to meet you exactly where you are. Let's listen in. Oliver Trevena, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, mate. Nice to be here.
Look, I know that you're usually on the other side of the microphone sometimes, or you've been plenty of experience on both sides of the microphone, on stage and on and off. But this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it. And it starts with this great napkin that you shared with me, Oliver. It says Cactus. You got stars on either side of it. Create a hydration revolution, ancient plant, future of hydration. Why did you share that with me?
Because of this baby right here. This is for my sins. I went against the advice that I'd been given, being don't start a beverage company, and I started a beverage company. It's cactus, it's hydration. It's like Mother Nature, what was right there in front of our eyes, a superfruit that I don't think had been tapped into much. Gives us, a lot of what we need: hydration, health benefits, electrolytes. There's a lot in that strange looking fruit.
Yeah. And it is a very strange looking fruit. And, people I think associate cacti in general with alcoholic beverages, but not necessarily with hydration. So the opposite of hydration in some cases. But how'd you get here, Oliver? I mean, you're you're an actor, you're a performer, and
Yep.
and then you did the typical entrepreneur thing where millions of people are telling you, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but you feel called to do it. So why'd you turn left? What happened?
Honestly, brother, it made absolutely no sense if I could have predicted it, right? Like my mom always says, life makes sense in reverse. So now I get to talk about it and have a conversation, but it's madness when I look backwards. Like every chapter, like those sliding door moments of life, that kind of you look back and you're like, you know, I always talk a lot about life quakes. Like to be honest, the hardest thing that happened in my life was still to this day the best thing. And that was going back to when I was 22 years old. I was attacked. I was a theater kid, and I was about to leave on a 3-month tour in the UK on cruise ships, and I got beaten in the street by 3 guys. I was beaten to death, so I was pronounced dead on the scene. And you know, it changed my entire life. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing ever. I went into 6 months of facial reconstruction and thought my life was over and I wanted to disappear. And, I thought it was the end of not only my career as being a performer, but just the end of life in general, because I had lost this amazing momentum and this opportunity that I was going to be on cruise ships and become a superstar. And, everything that I had mentally laid out as my path forward changed. But I look back 22 years and it was the best changing point ever, because admittedly, I would have loved to have kept my teeth. But it ended up putting me on a path that without that experience, I don't think I would ever been on that path. I would have never moved to America. I moved to the US really because I was in fear. And I really needed a fresh start, and I didn't feel kind of safe in my home anymore of England. And that pushed me to get out of my comfort zone, because I had no comfort zone anymore. And that's what happened. It's actually, someone said a line to me the other day that I'd never heard. They said to me, I was going through some stuff, some pretty tough stuff in business. And they said to me, you can have comfort and you can have growth, but you can't have both. And that really stuck with me, because whenever I've been comfortable in life, I've never really grown, and it's the same in business. When you're comfortable, and I've experienced this even with CALIWATER, when I'm comfortable, it feels great. There's not a lot growing, and then suddenly you're like, I'm so stressed. I'm so, I'm in complete fear again. I'm panicking. I'm overwhelmed. And then you take a step back and you look and you're like, we're growing,
Right.
So it really resonates with me. It was a friend of mine, Trent, who's also a founder. I would say he saved my ass that day. I was just having a complete and utter meltdown. It's to how I got here. Moved to the US 22 years ago. Thought I was going to be in a boy band. I looked very different. I had a full big set of, bleach blonde hair. I think I looked like Justin Bieber.
Me too.
Before. Yeah, oh yeah. See, look what happens. Look what time does. I think I looked like Justin Bieber before there was Justin Bieber. And that was what I wanted to do. And then a few years in, that changed. I kind of lost my passion for music. No, I won't say I lost my passion for music. There were a lot of people in that world coming out at like 15, 16, 17, all the people I've known for many years, like the Jonas Brothers and Christina Aguilera. And there was all this. And I was like, I'm too old. I'm in my 20s. And I got an acting agent and I enrolled in acting school. I'd done that since I was a kid. I grew up as a dancer. I did 12 years of ballet, at modern jazz theater. I did everything. I was one of those kids. So I had experience, and, I loved acting. And so I went to an acting school, got an agent, and out of nowhere got offered a hosting job, which is your job. I needed work and I needed to stay in America. So my immediate response was, I'll do it. They were like, had an experience? I'm like, yeah, loads, that's what I do.
Sure.
And I was on a red carpet the next evening with a microphone in my hand, interviewing people, which was funny because actors were coming down who I'd met before, and they're like, Oliver? And then I'm interviewing them, and it stemmed into, I did around 10 years in that world, everything from the show Young Hollywood to a show for the Hollywood Reporter. I did the Grammys pre-show, the billboards, American Music Awards. And it was incredible. And I loved it. But for me, it felt like I've always said it felt like I wasn't being challenged, but you know what it was? I felt comfortable. Now looking at it from that lens, I felt very comfortable. And with that, I didn't feel challenged. And I started to kind of, dive into little business ventures here and there. I was modeling. I was I was modeling for a bunch of companies. I was an ambassador for a clothing brand called All Saints. It was my favorite brand ever out of the UK. And they were starting to expand into the US. And I was like, I want to do more with this brand. And I did. And got really stuck in, and we expanded it globally. And I was like, oh, that business is interesting. Like when you do 1 + 1, you get 2. In entertainment, you're like 1 + 1. Where's it? What's going to happen? It is a game of luck, and sometimes that luck comes 20 years later. Sometimes it comes overnight, and sometimes it never comes. I like business because if you wake up every day and you put in the work and you put in the hours, you see some results. It might not be the result you expected, but you see some momentum. And so I started to kind of fall in love with that, and then I guess, because I had been in the entertainment space so long, I'd also got back into acting just because the hosting kind of, I hung my microphone up for a little bit, and then I got back into acting and started to kind of do more in the brand space and build brands with talent and invest with talent and, do things like that just because I built great relationships over the years. And one of my first kind of investments was a company called Next Health, which is a longevity clinic. It's kind of like the idea of preventing disease before you get disease, preventing issues before you get the issues, getting ahead of it. And they were doing like IVs and blood testing, and I helped get involved and expand the company. And during that, obviously, I only invest in what I love, and I was having all my blood testing done, and sugar levels were always high, which was strange because I was quite healthy at the time. I haven't always been healthy, but at that time I was. And I put it down to coconut water. I loved coconut water. And I used to drink like three a day. And then I realized like I was having too much sugar. There's good sugar, but you still don't need 7 grams of sugar a day. And that's what I was doing in coconut water. And so I started to go down this rabbit hole of what else is out there, what hasn't been tapped into. I'd had friends kind of launch beverages in pomegranate juice and acai and, all these kind of high sugar fruits that have benefits, but they come with a lot of sugar, and came across kind of cactus, the prickly pear fruit, and how kind of, I literally say it's magical because it just is this fruit that we've all seen and sits on the side of the road or sits on a mountaintop or, all over the world as well in many different countries, not like a coconut that can only be harvested in certain places. And so the health benefits from it are incredible. And I was like, this has never really been tapped into. And I had a lot of friends in like South America and, areas like that always used to mention prickly pear. They'd be like, oh, you have a bad stomach? Have some prickly pear. You have skin, prickly pear. My daughter's sick, prickly pear margaritas. I knew it tasted great as a mixer as well. And so I just thought there's something here. And that embarked me on this path of getting CALIWATER out into the world, doing it with my best friend, Vanessa Hudgens. We learned a lot. We learned all the challenges. As I say, going back to so many people told me, don't do a beverage. If you're going to do something, found something else. This is the first company I founded. And, they're all right because it is incredibly hard. Any business is hard. Being an entrepreneur, being a founder, you carry a lot of weight on your shoulders. It's stressful, but I think beverage in itself is you have to use a lot of cash to get momentum. When we look at other beverages like Prime and, even Liquid Death and that, they've made such a mark, but it costs hundreds of millions to make the mark. And that's the kind of behind the scenes that people don't see. It's been challenging, but I think with any business, if you believe in it, if you put the product first and the quality of the product first, and you have enough passion to kind of go through the madness, which I already had because I was in the entertainment industry. You've got to be kind of crazy to want to make that your full-time career. You have to love it. That's the only reason you stay in it. And that kind of led me to where I am today. And now I'm talking to you.
Love it. You dropped a lot there, Oliver, and I want to go back almost to where you started. 22 years old. You leave the theater and you get attacked.
Sorry, I was 21 when that happened.
You're 21, and it was 22 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I just turned 44, so there's the matter.
All right. So you were 21 years old. You're a theater kid, and literally you're about to leave on this incredible journey of traveling cruise ships and performing on the cruise ships. And for a lot of people who don't understand, that's actually a way that a lot of people get started in entertainment business, because it's a way to really consolidate a lot of like-minded people in one place. You get a lot of reps because you're performing all the time.
Yep, you got it.
And you get really comfortable and good at it in that environment. So it's a great practice arena. So you had this like literally snatched away from you.
Yep.
But not just that, but you had your life snatched away from you.
Yeah, so I'd just been in rehearsals for 3 months up in a place called Norwich, which is in like, I'll say geography because I get it wrong. It's like a few hours from London. And this happened, I think it was a Friday or the Saturday night, and I was leaving on the Monday. So that shows you how close it was to kind of me embarking on this, I guess, new chapter in life.
Yeah, so you'd done all the practice.
Yeah.
You're about to go to perform.
Yeah.
And life changes.
Yeah.
And life is nearly taken away.
Yeah.
And I think it's profound that you were on death's bed, right? I mean, you were pronounced dead.
My parents were called and they were coming to say their goodbyes. So, yeah.
So what is the first moment? Because I think this is really important, and I saw a little bit of a theme in your story, but there's a moment where you grabbed onto something and you came back and you fought back from that. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember what it was? Was it something your mom said? Because obviously you talked about your mother and some of the things that she said. I wonder if it was something that she said, something.
I mean, my mum's Irish, and that basically means she's like a walking fridge magnet. You know, she'll hit you with a quote for everything. And she used to literally be at my bedside in the hospital and look at me and say, "Come on, son, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Which obviously is a extremely famous quote now, especially since Kelly Clarkson released the song. So look, it all played a part. I mean, I'm so grateful for my parents, because when I say I was low, like, I never forget, there was a moment, obviously I was out of a lot of it, right? Like I was on medication and drugs and linked up to machines and intensive care, and everything that I went through I was taken, transported or changed to it was called the Queen Victoria Hospital, which was a facial surgery unit, a hospital specifically designed for that. And that's where I had the jaw reconstruction and everything else. And I remember my mum, I hadn't seen myself in the mirror. I hadn't got out of the hospital bed. And at this point I had, and I was in a wheelchair and she was taking me out to get some fresh air. And there were glass doors. And I remember seeing my reflection in the glass door, and I looked like a monster. Like my head was 3 times the size, of swelling. I had no face. And at that point, I wanted to die. I was like, I'm done. I'm out. And that was a deep thought that was in me for a long time, that I think I struggled with. Even when I started to look normal, I didn't know if I did look normal. The part of the reason, as I said, why I moved to the US was I got compensation money from the government, which was, I think it was around £13,000, give or take, which was, that time the exchange rate was better. It was like $25,000. And that's what helped me. And I kind of had this like positive outlook, being like, I'm going to turn things around and I'm going to, have this new life. And I'd gone to London and I'd started to like get in the mix again. And really, I guess to your point, like grab it, but I hadn't dealt with a lot of the shit, like from externally, I was like, let's go, I'm in America. I've got a new life. And that was how I lived. I think that's why hosting was so good for me and so bad for me, because I got so good at putting on a show, putting on the mask and being like, hi, I'm Oliver Trevena and welcome to, it's you trick yourself into what am I actually feeling? Especially
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
As well, you become the role. And so for me, when you say about grabbing it, I guess it's been a constant journey of having to grab it, if that makes any sense.
Totally does.
It's the voice in, it's like the same voice in my head that cripples me is the same voice that also helps me win. Because it keeps me going, it keeps me pushing, and I'm in that conflict, which drives me, that makes sense to me because I know what's, or at least I think I know what's going on in there. But at some point I had to really, I would say, what was it, 9 years ago, I hit a bottom being like, I can't carry on running. I was exhausted. Like I was just exhausted. I had enough. Enough of pretending, enough of running, enough of like pretending that none of this exists, this fear, this, crack inside of me. And I finally started to kind of have to peel back the onion. And that was when I kind of became like, I love that. I was like, oh my God, this is a feeling of release that I get from this. And I started to try all different things. I tried, one of the first things I went on was like landmark course. And then I went from there and I did a boga in the mountains of Canada. And then I tried Bufo. And then I went to Hoffman Institute. And, I did Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen. It was, for me, it became exciting to like learn more about myself and learn more about what it actually feels to, what it's actually to be, what it's like to be, not to feel normal, to not wake up with that, the world's going to end. That was my normal feeling. Everything was fear. And I think that played a great part in my life. Like I truly believe that fear that I live with, and I still live from time to time, played a real positive part in my life, because that fear is what got me on that plane and left my family, who I love so much, and moved to America. That fear is what made me take risks that I probably wouldn't have taken if I was comfortable. So that's that makes sense. I've never described it that way, but that makes sense to me,
So, Oliver, this is where I was going to get to, and you said it right away, and I think it's so powerful. For more than 90% of the population of at least North America, right? And maybe I should say, I'll prejudice this further and say people who were born in North America. They'll hear a story about someone getting on the plane to go to another country across an ocean, and that's not what they think of to feel safe. They don't think of putting everything you own in a briefcase or a suitcase and running across an ocean as a thing to feel safe. But you did. You put yourself in a new environment to change your perspective, and I think that idea that you were willing to take action in the face of fear, positive action for yourself in the face of fear, to maybe clean the lens, to maybe give yourself a fresh start, to find something, was really positive. And also the way you described, even, you were putting on a mask on the red carpet, right? Hey, I'm Oliver, and we're here in this beautiful place with all these beautiful people doing these beautiful things, right? But and you realize it was helpful to you, and it hurt you. It put a mask on. It kept you in that sort of fake reality.
Well, it's the running, right? Like, to your point, like moving to another country helped me massively, and it made me feel safe for a little bit.
Right.
Getting on the red carpet and acting like things are amazing help you, because that's half the battle. It's like stay in bed or get up and, do it. Eventually that caught up with me, and I had to sit still and be like, okay, what is going on, Yeah.
Right. And so you had a moment where you looked yourself in the eye. Kudos. Not a lot of people do landmark alone, but you did landmark Buffalo.
I had a lot to unravel.
Right. Like you were consuming all of this personal development, and there's really two big things about this, and I think this is really interesting. I often think about the fact that, I've had a career as an entrepreneur. You've had a career as a performer, changing into an entrepreneur, and I've just been an entrepreneur. But I've always felt that, to a certain degree, entrepreneurs are kind of like entertainers in a little bit, right? Because we're used to performing. We're used to practicing in the shadows. Nobody gets to see it. And this equation, I love the fact that you talked about that in entertainment. Sometimes 1 + 1 = question mark, and one day it works out. And at first you said in business 1 + 1 = 2, and you changed it later on to say, well, no, 1 + 1 = feedback, and you get some results, and you can change them and you can modify them. It's almost the same equation, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
It was really cool. I remember a little while ago, I was listening to, I was going through a tough time in my business, and Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend just came out. His great podcast. And I was listening to him, and the way he was talking, it was almost like I was sitting with a bunch of my CEO buddies talking, because they were talking about investing in relationships. They were talking about investing in themselves. They were talking about in creation and how it is so low reward. So, for a long time. And I think that the need to be able to iterate all the time is also there. And I think that's really powerful. And that brought you from, to this place of curiosity in your own personal health, but where's all the sugar coming from? And moving towards prickly pear and this idea of cactus water. And I think that curiosity is really, really very interesting.
Curiosity is for sure.
Right. So how did that curiosity land you on did you find cactus first and then get curious, or did you get curious?
Cactus, I had heard it, right? Like, as I say, I had friends that would mention it, right? I had, on every aspect, from a health benefit, from a, that was where me and Vanessa connected, was because she'd always talk about prickly pear margaritas. She'd be like, I was on a road trip and I had a prickly pear margarita. You have to try it. So I'd heard prickly pear a lot. In all honesty, I didn't even know that the prickly pear was part of the cactus. Do you know what I mean? I'd heard prickly pear. I didn't know.
Well, it sounds so much more gourmet than cactus, doesn't it?
What's that?
It sounds so much more gourmet than cactus.
Of course,
pear.
Of course,
it sounds like a delicacy.
Okay, exactly, and it looks kind of like it too. It's like, hang on, how did you get there? How did you two hook up? So yeah, that I guess it'd been planted in my mind enough that when I started to then look at it, it wasn't a complete shock. There was something already there. And then I started to look into the business. I mean, there was a cactus water already on the market. I wasn't like the innovator of the space or the, it wasn't like some genius that came up with something no one else had. I just felt like there was a market there. I felt like, coconut water is an empire. It's huge. And as I said, I was a coconut water drinker myself, but I thought like, climate change. I had friends that were investors of a couple of coconut waters, and all I ever used to hear from them was the toughest part was like the sustainability aspect. It takes, the time keeps increasing on how long it takes to harvest the coconut. There's only certain places they can do it. Shipping costs are going through the roof. And then, you look at that compared to prickly pear. Well, this fruit lives pretty much everywhere. It takes 80% less water to harvest the crop. Less sugar, less calories. And I was like, hang on, all this needs is a platform, all this needs is a moment, the same as you come across some of the world's most amazing actors on a West End or a Broadway show. And you're like, that guy just needs a platform, that guy just needs a shot. That's literally how I felt about cactus, prickly pear. I was this guy just needs his moment. That's all it is. And then that's the challenge, right? Is getting people to see beyond what I used to think, is like, hang on, this is like, call it what it is. You're like, I mean, I'm sure there's plant experts out there that would say it's the most beautiful thing to look at. Me personally, I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, that's ugly, but then you find that little bit of magic. And then you taste the magic. And that's goes back to the quality of like, Vanessa and I, when we were launching this brand, we really wanted to create something that tasted great and had quality. Because we didn't want to be a gimmick either. That was the other thing. Like it's you can't turn around without knocking into a celebrity brand at this point. It's not cool anymore. It's not like everyone's done it. And I think we wanted to be, and we are, like, you remove all the bells and whistles, we're a great product, and I think that's what we're always, I think it's a positive and a negative. It's like you have We have, incredible investors of the brand that have chose to put their own money, who are massive celebrities who get, paid to promote a brand, and they're choosing to invest in us and put money in. At the same time, you don't want a consumer to think, look at all these celebrities. Is it just a gimmick? So it's that push and pull. It's like having it work for you, but not having it work against you.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, I want to go back, and you said that you didn't invent cactus-water; it already existed. Steve Jobs didn't invent the cell phone, didn't invent the MP3 player, didn't invent the tablet computer, but he certainly found a way to improve each of those things in a way that made sense, right? So I love that. I love that idea. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and celebrity brand space is something that I've become increasingly fascinated with. A while ago, we had Diego Osorio, who's the CEO, founder of Lobo 1707 Tequila, and famously, he's got Arnold Schwarzenegger and LeBron James as investors in his brand, and he talked about that idea of celebrity brand space as well, because initially it sounds attractive, but it's also complicated, right? There's a whole bunch of complexity around it, because people think that you're saying buy it because the celebrities are here, but you're not saying that. You're saying they came to invest in you because they believe in what you're doing. They
by the way,
in the product, right?
It's 100% just the product, because I love my friends and I love my peers in the industry. If I sent them a drink that didn't get them excited, they would be like, no chance. They'd have no problem telling me no. Or maybe even the ones that wouldn't tell me no, they'd just say nothing. So no, they're involved because they love the product. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah. I remember hearing a similar story where one of the celebs, and it was LeBron, brought a bunch of premium tequilas, including Lobos, into a room, and he tested all of them and argued about why what makes it different. And I believe I have sort of the same vision about you. But there's another complexity that you talked about, and I think this is really important. You talked about Vanessa Hudgens, and you said working with your best friend. And that in itself has its complexity. You have a business partner, you start a brand with, another celebrity. She's got a big personal brand, and she's your best friend. You're doing business together now. How was that? How did that work?
You know what? It's always, I want to say it's always been great. Of course, we talk, it's just communication. I think it's like any relationship, business, personal, or anything, you're going to ride every wave if you can just communicate. There's stuff that I'll say to Vanessa, she'll agree on, or maybe, taste is always a big one. I mean, she's a perfectionist as far as taste. It would be like, oh no, we should change this, or, we have thoughts around things, especially early on. It's communication, it's the acceptance that we don't have to always agree. And the acceptance that, like, she might not always do what I would expect or like her to do, and I might not always do that as well. It's like we're not, it's like anything. It's just, it's strange, because now when I think about it, like, it's not like the friendship didn't change. We were talking that way anyway. Vanessa was always like a ride or die friend, and I mean that because she says it how it is. If I need a check, she check me. Like, she'll be like, you got to figure this out, blah, blah, blah. That's a real friend. It's not a Hollywood friend. It's not a fair weather friend. The real friends can tell you you're good, can tell you you're bad, and you can do it. It's always another line. I'm sounding like a fridge magnet now, but there's mean what
well,
you
at least
say.
You come by it naturally, right? You come by it honestly. Your Irish heritage coming out. You got to be quotable.
Irish heritage, Irish beard. Mean what you say, but don't be mean when you say it. I think that's the key, right? It's better out than in, say it. And I think that's what Vanessa and I have always had. It's honest communication, the good, the bad. And I think that will flourish any personal friendship, and it will survive any business relationship.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've heard, and we've talked about on the show before, we've talked about people who take things that are their hobbies or have sort of personal things that blend into their business, and they really want to separate those things because when the business gets hard, there's nowhere to run to. if when the business gets hard, is Vanessa someone you can still turn to? Is that what you mean by having that level of communication where you can just
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
share the good and the bad?
Yeah, I mean, we share the good and the bad. We have transparency there. I think, full honesty, there's a lot that I can't turn to her for because she doesn't have the experience. If it's a feeling thing and I need like a friend, 100%. If it's a business thing, sometimes I have to, call a few people who I look up to who have been there before, who can give me, advice. Like I mentioned my friend Trent because he's a founder of a company. It's called Kirk, Kurk. There's a little plug. Incredible like supplement, but he's been there. He's started, he's launched it, he's faced the challenges, he's had the issues, he's had the the struggles of building a team, losing a team, so I can turn to someone like that not only as a friend but as a kind of peer to get that advice because they can give it. I think there's something in that's so beautiful when you be like, I just don't have the answer for you. I think that's a real friendship. You don't have to know it all. And so, yes, I mean, there's things I go to Vanessa for and there's things I don't. And I'm sure she likes that. She's now a mother of two. I'm picking up the phone every 10 minutes being like, we got a supply chain issue of prickly pear. We're struggling with this and all that. And she'll be like, okay. Not that she doesn't care, but, call someone that can help. So I think it's knowing, like any kind of journey, you learn the boundaries, who can excel at what, you build your team, which is also really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I want to get into the beverage business because beverage business is very, very competitive and very, very tricky. You've got these cans that cost way more than they should cost considering what's in them. And you've got some beautiful artwork on it. So that didn't come for free. You add to the fact that you've got this product that you got to put in it. And then you've got to distribute this thing that now weighs something and you've got to send it all over the place. And then you've got channels of distribution and timelines between when you ship and when you deliver and when you get paid and when the final, like I remember when I went from software to a physical product, my mind nearly exploded. So you're dealing with all of these kinds of challenges. And I remember when I went into the energy business, which is like the beverage business because fractions of pennies matter immensely in that environment. So you're in a business where pennies matter and distribution matters and inventory matters. And these are all complexities and variables that you need to learn at the same time as learning the actual beverage itself, right? And that part of it. How have you made sure that you stay a student all the way through it? How have you brought the intensity and the passion of the product alongside the passion to the widgets and how you put them all together?
I mean, everything you said, it's that plus more, plus, it's a, as I say, I've always just invested. This was the first company that I founded. And there's so much that doesn't make sense, even beyond the product. Even just, I remember trying to get the drink in our first retailer, right? Like in our first store. And they would kind of say to us, oh my God, Oliver, we love this. But who's your distributor? And I would be like, oh, we don't have one yet. And they're like, oh, let us know once you get a distributor. And so then I would go meet with distribution companies and they would say, how many retailers you're in? And I'm like, oh, we're not in any yet, but they want to stock you. And they're like, oh, we can't bring you on as a client until you have like 50 plus stores. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Whatever madness is it? And that's the thing. A lot of things don't make sense. So then you just got to get creative and kind of play around with it. And I learned so much. Like I made so many mistakes. I still make mistakes, but I'm not I've never tried to be the founder that's a CEO either. I always was like, I'm the founder. I'm not paid by the brand. I raise money and build a team. And there's elements of that have worked and elements that have not worked because of that reason. I mean, our first CEO, which I've never said in an interview, and I probably shouldn't say, but I feel like this is the time to be honest, was committing fraud. Like we went through everything. We literally, within the first year, I was like, why did I do this? Like, why didn't I listen to my friends that were telling me don't do beverage? Like I was here I was in a place in life where I'd felt like I had spiritually evolved and finally felt like I was at peace and was enjoying my life. And now I've just put the biggest headache on my plate. And I'm like, I'm just crazy. And everything that felt like could have gone wrong was going wrong. You know, we had this amazing outside like buzz, but I couldn't find people. It's so hard in today's world. And I don't believe it's exclusive to us. I think it's just really hard to find people that have that same passion for your brand that will, you know, work the hours and blood, sweat and tears. It's hard. You know, it's really hard to kind of find your people. We went for a lot of challenges. You know, I like in hindsight, looking back, it probably would have been smarter, which I now know. And, you know, I've invested in a bunch of CPG brands and tried to share my advice and my mistakes to stop them from making the same ones. But sometimes it's like, don't rush, you know, stop and pause, you know, go negotiate with Whole Foods that, you know, you have this massive celebrity and you'll do an exclusive deal for those 300 stores and do that. I didn't do any of that. You know, we were on a website creating billions of media impressions. We barely even had product. I made so many mistakes, but through mistakes you learn.
Right.
Yeah, but to your point, it's so hard. It's a hard business. And I think that's where so many people, you know, we try to do things differently and we still try to do things differently to this day, where I just heard so many stories from friends that had put money into beverage brands, and they were beverage brands that I were like, oh, you must have done really well. It's like they went public. Like, no, we lost everything, you know, because so many, as you know, in beverage and a lot of CPG, but beverage specifically, they're always upside down. You know, even when they get to $1 billion brand, it's upside down. And that is really hard to eventually win. And so for us, we've tried to be lean. And with that, you know, there's like anything, there's great things to keeping it lean, and then there's negatives to keeping it lean, because you don't have the massive, like, you know, friends would always say to me, well, look at Prime, you know, they're worldwide, they're in every store. And it's like, well, but they spend an absolute fortune. And I don't know Prime's numbers, but I'll be intrigued to see how this journey ends, you know? And so I'm always trying to be like creative, being like, no, we don't need to spend this. We don't need to do that. Let's try and see where we can, you know, get a bit smarter. But then at that point, you sometimes clash with your team because they have an idea of, you know, what they should spend or what they should do. And then you trust in the team. And then if it doesn't work, you're kind of conflicted because you're like, why didn't I trust my gut? So you're always experiencing, at least I am, this like conflict between myself and what I'm being told, because there's part of me that feels like, well, I've never run a beverage company, so I'm going to trust someone. And that's what you do. You bring in a CEO, you trust them. And then, like I said, within the first 6 months or the first year, I should say, I was like, oh, you're stealing money, you know? Which I only found out thanks to a friend who really like went under the hood and looked, and thankfully we got all the money back. But it was so stressful, you know?
Yeah.
So
and I think that's you've identified, I think, first of all, a values-based organization. And people talk about this superficially, you know, cause, purpose, belief, and having a purpose in your business and all that kind of stuff. People talk about that. But ultimately, I think there's a big difference between people who want to just scale a company, multiply the top number, and pray the bottom number comes along, versus scale for impact or grow for impact. Growing themselves, growing a team, and you've talked about team over and over and over again, growing a team to make an impact in something that means something. You've talked about your commitment to your own personal health for obvious reason, right? You came back from death's door. You're committed to taking care of this meat suit because you fought for it. You fought for where you are. You crossed an ocean to rediscover yourself and find your purpose. And you've done the hard thing over and over again. So you being focused on health and wellness makes a lot of sense to me. And you bringing something to people that is a viable alternative also makes sense to them, especially something that's attractive and nice and tasty and all those, you know, has other nutritional, you know, taste benefits in addition to being nutritionally beneficial. All of that speaks to me of impact. right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what helps you get out of that comfort zone and into
Yeah.
the zone of a little bit of discomfort and a little bit of
Yeah.
excitement and a little bit of energy, because that's what keeps you going, doesn't it?
Yeah. 100%. Without that, I mean, you nail on the head there. You've gotta have that, because without that, I think you throw the towel in.
Right. Right. So, and I want to go back to Vanessa. Is her greatest role with you in the company to keep you connected to that impact and that purpose? Because you said she's more of on the emotional side where you can lean into her. Is that what she gives you in the business?
I think she does it without even trying.
Really?
She's like my best friend. So just knowing that we're in this together keeps me so driven. Like it's like she's like family with me. It has to win. We have to make this win.
Yeah.
And of course, like, she's always there. I think that's the other thing people have seen, at least with this brand. When I think about like an Expo West or something like that, like Vanessa's down there behind the booth, 10 hours pouring samples for people. People can't believe it. I mean, last year, I think she was like 7 months pregnant, something like that, and she's down there behind the booth, not just taking a picture. She's down there literally going, here, here, 10 hours, to the point that she's like, at one point, I remember she was like, I need to use the restroom. Like, you can go. That shows, the passion shows. And I think that's where you can build longevity. And, what we were talking about earlier, like, you might not do this, but you're doing this, and there's success there, at least for investors, at least for, the long game. Because otherwise it's smoke and mirrors, and there's enough of that in the entertainment industry, so it's, trying to do something a little bit different. But yeah, she's, having her there, being on this journey with her obviously means so much. And, everyone who's backed the brand and invested the brand, so many friends and family. And it's like, it's a stress on your shoulders. I will say, like, that was, I remember waking up like it's like the first couple of weeks of launching the company. This is a story I haven't shared. I woke up, we did a launch event in like Joshua Tree, and I had so much fun. It was so great. So many friends, and we had DJs, and we had this, and, we offset a lot of the costs with other sponsors, and it was great. And I woke up and I had the worst hangover. Like, I'd gone at it. And I was like, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. I need to be so focused. And I haven't picked up a drink since. I'm like 3.5 years sober. And this is a big reason of why I'm sober, because I can't, I can't have the guilt of, no one knows what will happen, right? I don't know if this will be $1 billion company. I don't know what the future holds, right? I don't know if I don't know. But I can put my head on a pillow knowing that I give it my best shot. And that's what it's like, I used to play football, right? Sunday league football in England. And I remember the games that I would just stress about for weeks on end afterwards were the games where I wasn't my best self on the field. The games where I was my best self and we still lost, I'd move on from really quick. Even if we lost 3-0, if I gave it my all and I did what I could, I was over that within 10 minutes, So I kind of have that thought with this. It's like, it's a lot of stress when you have other people's money in your company. And I need to know that I wake up and I do the best I can, and I represent the company the best I can, and I show up and I don't miss things and I don't forget things. I don't sleep in, So yeah, you sacrifice a lot as a founder, which I don't think people realize.
No, but it's because of where the idea comes from. Oliver, this is a point in the conversation where I always evoke a great napkin that we received several years ago, 11 years ago, from a great man. His name is John Rulin. And his napkin was, what you appreciate appreciates. And what he was saying is, when you appreciate someone and you let them know and you show them with your appreciation, they appreciate and value to their community, to their people, to you, to everyone. And that napkin and his work started a wave of gratitude that went around the world. He created a company around it, suddenly passed away just over a year ago. And ever since, we've been asking every guest to shout out someone and lay some appreciation on them. Who would you like to shout out and appreciate today?
My mom. I feel like it's an easy answer and probably one that people would expect, knowing me. And my dad. You know, they've both played a massive part. It hasn't always been roses, but I'm lucky. To have great parents who have seen me through a lot, and we've been through a lot together is worth its weight in gold.
It's beautiful. Thanks for joining me, Oliver. It was great to meet you.
So lovely to chat. Truly.
As this conversation begins to settle, you may notice that what stays with you isn't just a story about cactus or hydration or even entrepreneurship. It's the quieter realization that sometimes the most meaningful revolutions don't come from inventing something new. They come from choosing to see differently. Oliver reminded us that growth rarely begins in comfort, that curiosity often follows disruption, and that leadership, real leadership, means carrying responsibility with presence, integrity, and care. So before you move on to whatever comes next, let's anchor a few ideas that you can carry forward. Comfort and growth rarely coexist. Growth often asks you to step forward before certainty arrives. Nature already solved many of the problems we're trying to out-engineer. Sometimes the future is ancient, waiting for a platform. Quality creates belief. People don't commit to hype. They commit to what works. Foundership carries invisible weight. Integrity is built in the moments that no one applauds and maybe no one's even paying attention to. Appreciation sustains long journeys. What you appreciate truly does appreciate. So here's your napkin challenge. Write down one area of your life or business where you've been choosing comfort. Ask yourself what's one small act of courageous curiosity and what could it look like there? And finally, send a message of appreciation today to someone who helped you stand back up when life shifted your path. Because the most powerful way to honor wisdom is to apply it or share it. Oliver's napkin reads, Cactus, create a hydration revolution, ancient plant, future of hydration. And perhaps as you reflect, you'll notice how that idea isn't really about hydration at all. It's about alignment, patience, and trusting what already works. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who's standing at the edge of comfort and growth. Leave us a review and subscribe if you haven't already. And most importantly, take a moment to jot down the one idea that stayed with you on a napkin and live it. Share it with someone you care about, someone who needs to hear that message. This is Paper Napkin Wisdom, where small ideas turn into big impact. Make it a great day.